Now that I've given you an introduction to the Java Scheduled Executor Service, let's talk about some of the policies that it supports. And these policies are defined by a class called ScheduledThreadPoolExecutor, which, as you may expect, implements the Scheduled Executor Service interface. So here's kind of a class diagram that illustrates the relationship between ScheduledThreadPoolExecutor and various other interfaces and classes. As you can see here in this diagram, this is used to schedule commands that run after a delay and/or lets them be executed periodically. And there's a bunch of different moving parts here, which we'll go through as we talk about the capabilities and policies that are provided by ScheduledThreadPoolExecutor. This class is useful when you need multiple worker threads or you want to get greater control over the policies that are defined by default. And it turns out that this is actually very important in practice because some of the policies are a little bit odd. The default settings for some of the policies you get out of the box are not what you might want. So therefore, if you want to get better control over the policies, you need to access the ScheduledThreadPoolExecutor and make an instance of it directly. So here's some examples of policies that are useful to set by getting access to a ScheduledThreadPoolExecutor. There's a policy that you can set and get that allows you to continue running periodic tasks even when the executor shuts down. And the default for this behavior is true, which means even after the scheduled executor goes away, these tasks could still continue to run by default. There's also a policy that you can set and get that will run delayed tasks, not periodic tasks, but delayed tasks when the executor has been shut down. This policy is also defaults to true. And then there's another policy that is used to immediately return or remove tasks from the internal work queue when the tasks are canceled. And this defaults to false. Now, from my point of view, all of these policies are backwards. They should be set the other way around. And the reason for that is if you program with the Scheduled Executor Service and the ScheduledThreadPoolExecutor, what you very quickly learn is that you usually don't want the task to stick around after the Scheduled ThreadPoolExecutor has been shut down. And you do typically want to remove tasks after they've been canceled. So the whole thing is very strange. And therefore, if you don't like the defaults, which is usually the case, you have to go in and explicitly set them. Now, the thing to remember about this is there's actually a factory method that's defined on the executor's utility class. And we'll talk a bit more about the executor's utility class and look at its implementation probably after this set of material on the scheduled executor service. But what you have to realize is if you get back a scheduled executor service from the new single thread scheduled executor factory method in the executor's utility class, you cannot legitimately try to downcast it to a scheduled thread pool executor. And the reason for that is that the method new single thread scheduled executor does not return a scheduled thread pool executor. Instead, it encapsulates it in something else that's called a delegated scheduled executor service for implementation-oriented reasons. And therefore, you can't directly downcast it. So you're going to have to make your own instance of this, which is, again, is a little bit tedious, but that's just the way things are. So this is kind of what you'll have to do if you want to change the policies on a scheduled thread pool executor. You should make one. So you can see here, we make ourselves a single-threaded scheduled thread pool executor, which means it just has one thread that will be used to run the timing operations. You could have more than one thread, but we're just going to limit ourselves to one thread here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the policies that are defaulted to weird values to something more sensible. So we're going to set the remove on cancel policy. We're going to set down, we're going to cancel a bunch of the other policies. And as a result, the whole thing is a lot more sensible and gives you behavior that doesn't cause crashes when things end up finishing after the scheduled thread pool executor has been shut down and so on and so forth. So that's just a quick overview of some of the policies. When we get into the example later, when we talk about the various timed memoizers, I will go through and demonstrate why these settings are so important. And you'll see if you did not make these settings the way you want, it would be very difficult to write a program that would run robustly in the face of timers that may expire at some point in the future when things shut down.